You show me a way that I can kill a buck, a mature buck, with as little scouting as I just did, quicker and easier, I'll switch the way I hunt. That's just tracking in a nutshell.
I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me.
Born in the heart of the Pennsylvania deer camp. With the help of experts, friends, and local legends, we bring you valuable knowledge and powerful stories for your hunting adventures. Welcome to the East Meets West Hunt Podcast with your host, Beau Martonik.
Let's do it. We're live. This is kind of interesting. I've never done a live podcast before, and I've done this for over 6 years now, and East Meets West Hunt Podcast. But I've got a pretty cool guest on today. I've got
Wait a minute. Nobody told me this was the first live event. Now I'm a little nervous. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. No, I've never done it in front of people before, or done it that way, but it's pretty cool to be able to do that. And Joe, I'm pretty pumped to be able to have you on here. You're an absolute legend here. I know you don't like hearing that, but it's pretty cool to be able to get to talk.
Well, I'm happy to be here anytime that we can push what we do. Push is probably the wrong word, but spread that we enjoy tracking, and we want more hunters to try it. If they want to add another, for lack of a better way of saying it, another arrow to their quiver, they can still tree stand hunt, do their drives and whatnot. But you get a good snow day and you got a nice set of track of land, whether it's down in Pennsylvania or Western New York or up in the Adirondacks, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, and it's funny because so in my family, myself and my dad and everyone, we haven't tracked a whole lot, but my grandfather was really big on tracking, especially when we used to get a lot more snow. We don't get as much as we did in the past during the gun seasons in PA, but where I live at, we've got 2 million acres of public land, big woods all around in northern Pennsylvania, but we do get snow on occasion. It's like still hunted, stand hunted a lot, bow hunting, and it's just something I haven't done a whole lot of, and I thought it'd be really cool to kind of get to talk to you about it. But Joe, how did you get started with that? I mean, did you start hunting the big woods like growing up, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, we have a dairy farm just on the lower side of the Adirondack Mountains, and we would travel a half an hour south of us into the real farmland to kill deer is what we would say, and we would go north to the Adirondacks to hunt deer. So it was a different dynamic. We enjoyed the Adirondack Mountains, and we also enjoyed the idea that the bucks are older. Down in the farmland, they didn't get the age structure that they'll get up in the big woods because the woods are so big and we're lacking a lot of hunters. So I guess to round out your question, or to try to sum it up, I was the kind of kid who did both. But as I got a little bit older, my late teens and early 20s, I just loved the Adirondacks. And one of our mentors, Jim Massett, was up there shooting these big 10 and 11 pointers and these great big bucks. And I was going down south shooting these spike horns, 3-pointers, and 4-pointers. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you outgrow it. Sometimes you want to get into the bigger woods. And that's where I started to develop to do this tracking thing. I wanted to see new ground, and I wanted to know there was some big old bucks in there, and I wanted to know no one else was in there chasing them. Now, you mentioned 2 million acres in Pennsylvania. Sounds great. All you need is a little bit of snow, and this definitely works.
Yeah, and so what's interesting about that, Joe, I've heard you guys up here talking, and I've interviewed Hal years ago and talked through it. But one thing I wanted to ask, and, you had mentioned about, you got to get still hunting kind of out of your mind when it comes to it. So what do you mean by that if you want to actually track deer? Well,
for the guys who want to try to actually track and be a tracker, the first thing you got to do is find the track. And I was guilty of this myself when I was younger. I would go into the woods, you'd come onto a nice hardwood ridge, and you'd see a scrape or a rub, a couple of doe tracks and whatnot, and it was just perfect deer country. Just looked gorgeous. So what do? You slow down and you start looking for deer. Well, now, just so you know, you've traded from being a tracker to now you're a still hunter. A tracker needs to find the track. You don't have to be quiet. You don't have to go slow. You don't even have to keep your head up. You just got to cover a lot of ground to find the track. You can't still hunt and cover ground in a speedy fashion. So just know if you want to try tracking, it's a full commitment to finding the track.
So when you say finding the track, like how do you know, or where do you plan to start? Like, you're talking about just walking until you find a track, but do you have a particular destination? Like I'm going to walk this direction, or there's a certain land feature or vegetate. Is there something that you are looking for to go to and have that idea versus, again, we're talking about, say, you have 2 million acres of public land. How do you know where to go?
How do you know where to go is a great question, and the first thing I look for is the right snow. If one area's got 10 inches of snow, one area's got 5 inches, I'm going to go for the 5 inches. Too much is not good either. You got to have the snow. The second thing I do is if I open up a map and I'm in this area, and let's say it's a 20-mile area that I just drove through, I'm looking for an area that shows me a lot of hardwood ridges. I don't want the water. I don't want the creeks, I don't want the beaver meadows, and I don't want the lakes. So the first thing I do is I open up my map and I say, hey, where's a big area, not many road access, that has a lot of hardwood ridges? And that's what I head for. And how do I decide how far I'm going? Well, I want to go away from the road because I believe you got a better chance of an older buck. But I also only go to 12, 1 o'clock away from my truck. So go to a steady pace, whatever you're comfortable with in. Don't look for deer. You're looking for a big track. And then when I get to 12, 1 o'clock, if I haven't found it yet, I'll either go left or right so I'm not getting farther away from my truck. Make a big swing.
And so when you have those ridges and those hardwood ridges, are you looking to head towards the top and run the top of the ridge, side hill it? Is there any thought, or is it kind of what you see once you're there? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. If the top of the mountain is small, in other words, it's only 300-400 yards wide and whatnot, you don't have to waste all your energy going all the way to the top. I believe if you're halfway, 3/4 of the way up, and you're going along the ridge, anything that went up or down, you're going to cut its track. So,
okay.
And whatever conserves your energy and gets you to cover the most ground is what I believe in. Because your job is to find that track with enough daylight left to kill that buck. That's your job. Not to see deer, not to still hunt through the areas. Your job is to get on that track as soon as you can.
Yeah, and I know with myself, I could see where I'd already struggle in that aspect, especially when you do so much scouting and looking, of where signs at or where deer typically are, of worried about bumping them or doing that, and you're saying you don't really worry about any of that.
If you come on in an area that has a lot of sign on it with deer tracks and whatnot, chances are those deer are already gone. You're late. You got to get to where he is. So you're looking for the big track and you're going to follow him. But you're not going to see the deer where he made the track. You're going to see where he's making tracks. You have got to follow him to where he is, not still hunt the area he was already at. And it is an adjustment. For me, it took me years. I would talk to my friend Jim Massett, and I would say, I couldn't find a big track today. And the biggest problem was my loop was too small. I was in my comfortable area. I was in the area that I enjoyed and that I had scouted, and I knew there was bucks around, but I never ventured out to find the track. You've got to want to have that venture attitude to get out and find it. And
just keep going and going and going, and whether that's day after day after day, until you find what you're exactly looking for.
Right, and that sounds a little daunting when he says it that way, but it is kind of true. But don't burn yourself out on doing it. A comfortable pace. I say the turtle wins this race. I would go as a young guy, and I would get out of my truck, and I'd go as hard as I could till 10 o'clock. Get in as far as, and I'm burning out. By 11, I'm kind of like, geez, I didn't find one today. And it's only 11 o'clock. You're so much better off to just a nice, slow, steady pace, whatever you're used to, whatever makes you comfortable, and just keep walking. But don't look for deer. You're looking for a track. It's a difference. It's a hard mindset when you got your rifle in your hand or your shotgun or bow, and you're not looking for the animal. You're only looking for the track.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But okay, so when you're going in and you're looking for those tracks, how are you determining as far as like how fresh that track is? Different snow will make things look differently as far as how fresh it is and everything else. So how do you look at that?
So in the beginning, it's just common sense. I mean, if it snowed at 5 a.m. and there's snow in the track, it's older than that. If there's no snow on the track, you know it's newer than 5 a.m. So you're going to have to use a little common sense. I also believe when it comes to aging the track, which is very important, is experience goes a long ways. I mean, and you can learn it fairly quick if you're paying attention to it. Look at the track. Look at your track when you left the truck. Lanny Benoit said it earlier today. Look at your track when you get back to your truck. You know it's 8 hours old. What does it look like? How so many factors. How cold is it? Is it melted out? Did it snow? Is the bottom froze? But you do want to pay attention to that. You do have to get experience on that.
Yeah, and like when you're going and from tracking all of these different deer and following them, do you find any patterns to how they're traveling or doing things, or is every buck kind of different?
Well, that's a great question. And in the Adirondacks, it's so much different than the farmland bucks. Farmland bucks have their bedding area, their feeding area. They have a smaller circle. In the big Adirondack Mountains, or in these big woods, as we call them, they lay down wherever they're tired. They eat when they're hungry. It's just a different dynamic. You've got to get that part out of your mind that you're going to pattern that deer. His loop might be a 3-day loop. You found his track on that ridge on Tuesday. You won't see it again on there until Friday because he's on the move.
Are any of the areas that you hunt, like say in the Adirondacks, do they have oak trees or any sort of mass crop that would kind of make them have spots they want to come back to, or no? In parts of the Adirondacks, there are a few oak groves and oak ridges and whatnot, but not where I hunt. We have a mass crop of beech nuts every so many years, but it's not patternable because every ridge has got beech trees. Yeah.
So, no, I get the whole food element on what they're going to eat and where they're going to bed. It no longer comes into play whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I find that like in Pennsylvania, where a lot of the places I hunt don't even have oaks in general, but what I've found, like when it comes down to the rut, I find it more consistent year over year because there's not that mass changing where the deer are or what they're doing. But it doesn't really even sound like that matters when it comes to tracking. Like you're kind of just throwing all those preconceived notions out of your head, and you're just focused on finding that specific track.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. You cannot pattern them. You can try. It's not going to work. You can sit in a tree stand where he went by and made a couple of scrapes, and yes, every so many years you will get lucky enough to kill him. But in the Adirondacks, if you want to get close to that big buck, or in some of these other big woods, whether it's Maine or even northern Pennsylvania and some of these places, the best, fastest way to get close to him is on the track.
Okay, so one thing that I had heard when I had listened to you actually with Pat here at Huntstock, I listened to you talk to him, and he had mentioned that your average buck was aged at 6.5 years old, and that's incredible to be able to see it, old deer like that. How are you determining from the track about how old they are?
Well, the biggest thing that I look at first and foremost is the size of the track. The big old bucks have bigger tracks, and there's a lot of people that hunt in a lot of areas that never have a 6.5-year-old deer, or very rarely do. So they've never seen what a 6.5-year-old track looks like, and it is quite a bit bigger. And I want to say this now, that nothing is 100%. So obviously once in a while you get an old buck that has a small foot. It happens. But if we're going to go with the odds, big old bucks have big feet. So he's going to have, and as he gets older, his dew claws are going to push in a little bit more. They get kind of flat-footed. Now, the next thing you're going to notice is a stagger, and that's his track right to left. As he gets older, his chest gets bigger. And as his chest gets bigger, his right side to left side obviously gets wider. So when you're tracking him in the snow, it'll almost look like two separate deer, or like a cross-country skier. Now, if they're running right next to each other, smaller buck. If they're wider, bigger buck. It's a lot of common sense in the tracking that you wouldn't see in farmland hunting.
What about, do you notice any consistencies with the older bucks having more of the rounder toes versus the pointed toes?
That's a great question. I do believe the older bucks do have more of the rounded toe just because they wear them off more. But some of that has to do with soil content they're in. You know what I mean? The more rocky area up in Ontario, when we hunted there, they shaved. There was so many rocks. All their toes are almost square. But, yeah, it will be. But I look more for the flat-footed, a little wider stagger. Those are the old bucks. Those are the ones you want to trail if you want that 6.5-year-old average.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And how many of, like, when you're hunting over your career, how much of it are in, places that and you've went to, or new areas?
I would say at least 50% of the bucks I shoot is in an area I've never been in. That is one of the beauties of tracking. You don't have to put the cameras in. You don't have to scout. You don't have to do anything. All you got to do is find the snow and make sure the area is big enough where you can go track. I mean, it adds another element to your hunting quiver, as I said.
Yeah, I mean, that adds another element to the adventure aspect of seeing new places and new things and getting to go and just check that stuff out, which is a really cool aspect of it, too.
Yeah, because the hunt in itself is an adventure. I mean, whether you put your tree stand in the oak tree or in the cherry tree or wherever you put it, the adventure of getting that buck. And this you can do on a daily basis if it snows. And every day will be a new adventure. That's why I encourage it so much. And I'm not saying don't go in the tree stands. Don't stop the deer drive if that's what you do or you're still hunting. But on that snow day, jump in your truck, look for those ridges, and go find that track. I promise you, you're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I know, like I said, I know you've talked about a lot of this stuff earlier, but just for the people that aren't here live and that are listening to it, when you're following those tracks, what are you technically, like, what is your thought process when you find that buck that you want to go after? Like, how are you following it? What is your thought process with that?
Well, when I first see the track, I obviously look up for the deer. If the track looks fairly fresh, you want to make sure he's not standing there right with you. But my second thought process is, what is this buck doing? Now, as most of these northern woods, big woods hunters know, he's only doing one of a few things. He's either looking for does, he's with a doe, or he's going to eat and lay down. And that's about it. There's 3 seasons in my mind in these big woods. It's the pre-rut, and by that I mean before they even start the chase phase. The season opens in the Adirondacks on the 3rd weekend in October. We have till about the 8th of November or so, and that buck's catchable. He's still feeding. He's laying some sign down, but he hasn't gone crazy yet. The hormones haven't kicked him into high gear yet. Then you've got from the 7th, 8th till about the 21st, 22nd of November, maybe the 25th of November, full-on rut. Before the does are ready, he'll travel miles and miles and miles. And then after the 25th, to the closing date, which could be anywhere the first Sunday in December, he has gone back to feeding more, not looking for as many does. And the reason why I say this, because back to your question is, what is my mindset when I'm on that track, depends on which of those 3 seasons I'm in. If I'm in the real early season, I think he's very catchable. So I'm going to go fairly fast on him till he gives me the sign that he's going to eat and lay down. If it's in the middle season, from the 8th, 9th to the 25th, I'm probably going to go a lot harder because he's going to travel a lot faster. So I'm trying to catch up to him. Now, if we get after the 25th, 26th of November, whole nother animal again. He's wore out. He's tired. Mother Nature tells him he's got to feed. Now I'm going to go fast, but I'm going to be looking for that lay down again. So depending on what time of year we are, kind of changes how hard I go on that track.
And then so you're basically following that track at, depending on what the speed is, the time of year and everything, but until you start seeing him have some signs in that track that he's going to lay down.
Right. There's no real secret sauce to it, but in my experience, if that buck is going on the easiest path and cutting the most ground that makes sense to him, he's on the highway. So you've got to get on the highway. This is where you just got to take off and go. Now, if he, if a guy was leaving work, he gets on the 4-lane, he's headed home, he's driving 55 miles an hour, he's taking the easiest path. Well, what does he do when he gets close to home? He slows down. So the buck's gait will start to slow down, just like the gentleman's car will start to slow down. And all of a sudden, he's going to take a right or a left that doesn't make sense. He was going the easiest path. He was cruising these woods straight away, and he took a right or left. Why would he do that? Well, you're going to notice the gait will start to slow down. In other words, the length of his stride has gotten shorter. And when he does that, he's going to start to weave. That's you and your development on your way home. You're now going left and right, and all of a sudden he pulls in his driveway, goes into the house and goes to the kitchen and goes right to the refrigerator. Because every guy, when he gets home from work, usually goes and grabs something to eat. That's what this buck just told you. I was going as far as I could, headed home, so to speak, took a right or a left, did a little zigzagging, started to feed. And what does he do after you feed? You either go to the couch or the bed. And this buck is going to lay down and chew his cud. Now, nothing's 1,000%, nothing's 100%, but the odds are good, especially if it's pre-November 8th or post-November 25th. This buck is going to lay down. He's going to feed for 50, 75 yards, and he's going to lay down. Think about this. I went and found that track. I followed him through the open hardwoods. He started going left and right and started to feed. And I'm within 200 yards of a 6, 7, 8-year-old buck. Kind of a fun day.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
It's compared to sitting in a tree stand, nothing against it, but on hour 3, you're looking at your watch, talking yourself into sitting another 20 minutes.
And so when you get to that point and you start seeing those signs of him, going off the exit and he's making some turns, he's heading home, he's about to go into the kitchen there. At what point does your style change? Like what goes through your mind at that point, and what's your action plan going forward?
When I first see him in the kitchen, when I first see him take that first bite, I become a moving tree stand. My mind tells me, my experience tells me he's within 200 yards. Hopefully he's 100 yards away and not 20 yards away and I already scared him. But my mind says he's laying down, he is within 200 yards. So I one-step him. So I went from going 55 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour to almost stopped. And when I say one-step him, I will take one step, wait a minute or two, and wait for him to make the mistake. That's what separates the guys who track from seeing an empty bed in a running track or shooting at running deer, never seeing the deer, is they won't go slow enough in the end game.
Yeah, and what do you, when they do actually, bed down and you're getting close, do you find that there's any particular things that they try to do, watching their back trail? Are they, a lot of times bedded up underneath, say the conifer tree or blowdowns, or what are some consistencies that you see there, whether from deer that you've killed or that you've blown out?
Well, one thing I can say, there's no consistency in it.
Okay.
Everyone is different. I've been accused of being a lucky hunter, which I disagree with. I say that I put myself in position to get lucky. That's and everybody needs a little bit of luck in the end game. So what I do on these bucks, whether he did like you had just said, did he make a little button hook and get underneath some blowdowns or get hid from you or get on top of the edge? Possible. But with a little luck, he's still on his feet feeding, or he just got up out of his bed and he's on the move, or he's still in the opening, he hasn't laid down, something that gives you just that little bit of luck to close the deal.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And what about when you end up, what if it doesn't work out that way and he takes off?
Well, which happens more times than not. Now, if you've scared the buck already, and as Hal would say, and Jim knows, and we all know, that buck's going to run for a ways. He's going to slow down to a trot. Then he's going to stop all of a sudden. He's going to look back. He wants to know if you're coming. In his mind, I believe, he only thinks it's a bump in. He does not know he's being tracked at this point. So he thinks you just happened to bump into him in the woods. So as he's looking back for 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4 or 5, he's going to then trot again, maybe run a little bit more, slow down to a walk, trot a little, stop and look back again. If you're not coming, he's going to go back about his business. Now, he might get back on the highway. He might go back into the kitchen. We don't know at this point. We're just back 500-600 yards waiting for him to readjust back to normal living. Now, game on again. You get to where he's walking again and you decide, is he on the highway or is he feeding? You're either going to start stalking him or you're going to take off on him again. But I want to tell you, if you don't kill him in the first jump, you better kill him on the second. Because if you blow it on the second jump, he now knows you're trailing him. He knows you're coming, and he becomes much, much smarter and much harder to kill.
Yeah, I experienced that last January. I was flintlock hunting. So in PA, we have a season after Christmas where you can hunt with a flintlock muzzleloader. And my dad and I were out, and we cut a couple buck tracks, and one of them was a good one. And we started following on the trail, bumped the deer. They were really close to where we first found the track, and bumped them, gave him some time, went after him again, ended up bumping him again, and then it was it was a tough scenario. So what we ended up doing actually was had my dad stay on the track, and I went out ahead. There was a bunch of like gas well roads in this particular area. So I went down a ways down this drainage system that they were heading down, got out ahead while he stayed on the track. The deer ended up coming by at that point, but they the whole time were looking back, but they had both shed their antlers at that point.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
See, now you need a little bit of good luck. That was a little bit of bad.
Yeah, but they went a couple miles at that point, and didn't at that point there was no meandering around or stopping. It was just moving.
Yeah.
Between that first and that second bed, what was interesting that I learned in that situation was it really wasn't. They didn't go that far.
No.
And is that something that you see often?
Yeah, I do see it often. And between the first jump and the second jump, sometimes isn't that far at all. Now, if you get a buck up in the middle of the rut and he's going to go look for does, it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes he'll just keep right on going. But in the pre-rut and the post-rut season and whatnot, yeah, he does not think you're trailing him yet. So between the first jump and the second jump, he could be fairly close. But you jump him a second time, unless he's really tired, that could be a long haul.
And in all of this, especially when you're in that close proximity, how much does it matter to you about what the wind is doing?
Well, the wind is always a concern. We all know how good these whitetails are with their scent. It's crazy. I just can't pay attention to it. I never leave the track, so I just deal with the cards that are dealt to me. Do I get busted because of the wind once in a while? Obviously I do, but I don't pay no mind to it.
Yeah, just because it's an uncontrollable at that point based off of if you leave that track, then you don't know anything at that point,
right.
And that's kind of your mindset with it.
Yeah, my mindset is I know how fast I want to go while I'm on the track. If I try to swing around on them because I think the wind is wrong, I lose all my confidence, and it just goes downhill from there. So I've been in the Adirondacks. I think we've all been there where the wind hits you in the face 1 minute, and 2 minutes later it's hitting the back of your neck. It's swirling, it's changing. He's going left or he's going right. So how do you know if he's downwind from you at any given point?
Have you ever jumped any of the deer into somebody else that may have been sitting or doing anything there? Or most of the areas you're hunting are so remote that there's just not other hunters in there?
In the last 30 years, I've rarely seen another footprint. And no, I've never jumped the buck that someone else has taken.
Okay.
And very, very rarely have I been on a track that someone else cut me off. That has happened up in Maine, but not in the Adirondack.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. I was thinking that from a Pennsylvania perspective. Even in some of these remote places during our gun season, we get a lot of pressure. So that's always been a concern of mine of bumping deer to other people. But
yeah, I talk about that sometimes because some people think, well, this is only a big woods game, and it really is. Although, if you happen to be a farmland hunter and you've been hunting this nice 9-pointer on your land for 2 years, and every time we get mid-season, he goes nocturnal. Nobody sees him in the daylight anymore. He's definitely gone nocturnal on you. Too many guys in the woods. Can you track him down? Yeah, you can. But you want a few things on your side. You kind of want it to be on a Tuesday or Wednesday. You really don't want it on the weekend. You want it to be a fresh snow. You're going to give it a shot, and you want to make it count. But you're taking a lot of risks. One, you could track him into a road, and he could get killed on the road. Or two, you could track him into someone else, and he kills him. Your goal is to kill him on that first jump when you jump him. So let's just say you've decided to do this. You go into your area. It snowed the night before and quit snowing at midnight. You're on your way to your tree stand, and there his track is. He went by at night. Do you want to risk it? If you got nothing to lose, why not? He'll come back, give it a shot, follow the buck at a crawl space if you think you're close to the bedding area, and shoot him.
Yeah. So, Joe, what are some, when you think back, all these hunts that you've been on, are there any particular ones that come to mind that are just like some of your absolute favorite ones?
Well, I've got two that are actually my favorite. The first one I'll touch base. I won't make it a long story, but it's the one with the second jump theory that we were just talking about. Back in like 04, 05, I happened to be coming down an old logging road, and a buck had crossed it. And I said, well, I'm going to take him. It was a deep snow. I did not go 200 yards on the buck, and he had bedded down and melted all the way down to the leaves. So I know he'd been there a long time. I also knew I blew it. The deer saw me coming, didn't give me any time to figure out what he was going to do, and he was gone. He ran to my left. The wind was going kind of toward him when he was going straight away, but he took a right-hand turn. I gave him that 20 minutes. I said, this buck is going to run off of this hill. He's probably going to look back a couple of times. I'm going to let him get back about his business, and I'm going to come up and try to get him again. What else you got to do? So I came off of the hill 20, 25 minutes later. The buck didn't run all that far, as you said. Sometimes they don't go all that far at that first jump. He only went maybe 300-400 yards, and he was down to a walk in no time. Well, when I noticed the walk, he had actually only walked a little ways, and he fed. Well, that just means that bumping that I did, he definitely doesn't think I'm coming. He got up from that nap that he had taken, that rest that he had taken, and he said, you know what? I'm going to eat a little bit now. It's kind of like you getting up in midnight from your house and going to the fridge and getting a snack. Well, I only went on him one step and for probably 25 yards, and I spotted him through the snow on the trees. I took the first shot at him, and he never moved. He couldn't see me, and I couldn't see his eyes that good, but he didn't know I was there. Reloaded, shot again, he mule kicked and took off. The buck ended up being a 9-pointer with a 20-inch spread that weighed 181 pounds. He was 7.5 years old. But it was on that second jump. Now, I can guarantee you if I messed up that second jump and went too fast when he was feeding, it'd have been a whole lot smarter and a whole lot harder to kill.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, so make that first or second jump the most important.
Yeah. But before we get into that second story that you had, I had something that just came into my mind that I've been thinking about. So for you guys that are tracking, you're going in, it looks like you're going in kind of lightweight. You're not carrying a whole bunch of stuff because you're trying to move efficiently through the woods. What is your plan for getting them out after you kill them?
Well, obviously that shouldn't be a concern. Our concern is killing the buck. What I say a lot of times is, let's not worry about getting the buck out, because what else would you rather be doing in the middle of November than dragging out your big Adirondack or Maine or wherever buck? Yeah. So I never let that bother me. What I do, if I shoot one, and no matter what time of day it is, I'll start to drag because I can do some of it. I always bring a rope. I always have a sling for my gun, even though I don't use it much until I've killed the deer or it's after dark. So I'm always carrying my gun. Sling it after you kill it, put a rope around his antlers, tie it to a 3-foot-long stick, 2.5, 3 feet long, that's strong enough to hold. I put it behind me, and I just head for the truck. Now, sometimes I might only drag 20 feet. Sometimes I might drag 20 yards before a break. Sometimes it's 60 yards. It's a little bit downhill, but I'm working toward my truck. When you get tired enough, you've had enough, mark the spot, head out, call your buddies. Yeah. You'll get them out.
Yeah, I guess that more of my question was around what you had just said there. You like to drag them, though. Like, that's your way of getting them out?
It is.
Okay. So, because for a lot of the deer that I've shot in remote places, typically I'm cutting them up and quarter and packing them out, learning it from elk hunting out west and doing that. But you still like to drag it. Yeah,
there's something about it, old school, not that bright. I don't know what the reason is, but I like to get my buck out whole.
Yeah.
And I've left a good number of them in overnight. I haven't had any bother them. And there's something about the next day. Your buddies will come to help you.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good time. That's where the camaraderie comes in, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I've also seen, have you ever used like those little like roll up sleds or anything to help you with that?
We've even packed in the regular ice sled, a small ice type sled. It's hard, and you bring it in. The roll up ones, I think they slide off too much.
Yeah.
But if you get one of them in, they will skid through the woods a lot easier.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're not hunting anymore. How much noise we make or what we do, it's just all fun from there.
Yeah, that's more after you go out and you're going back, and then you get the sled and come back in with your buddies and pull it out at that point.
Yeah, and you'd be amazed at how 3 or 4 fresh guys, how much they can really get a deer out in a hurry. I've never had to leave one 2 days. We're always out the next day.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, now let's go back to what you're saying to your second most memorable hunt. You had 2 that came to your mind right away.
Well, the second one, and I've told this on some of my seminars, probably more than I should have, but it kind of encapsulates my whole theory on tracking. It was back in 2005, I believe. It was the opening weekend of the Adirondack Mountain season. And I was watching the 11 o'clock news on a Saturday night, and the weatherman said, we got a lake effect snow warning for Warren and Hamilton County. Well, back then, the computers aren't what they are today, but I got on, and there was a blog on there that a lady said, I've got 4 inches already. and it was midnight on Saturday. I wasn't ready to hunt. You touched a little bit about the pack you need. I don't need a lot. I need a lunch. I need my knife. I need my dragon rope. I need extra shells, and I'm on my way. A map, a compass, and a flashlight so I can get out. No GPS yet at that time. So I threw that all in the bag the next morning. Away I go. I got to Inlet, New York. It's on the way, I guess, to Warren and Hamilton County. I thought I'm going north. I go in and I buy a map. I go, where is this Warren and Hamilton County? I'm burning daylight. It's probably 7:30 in the morning. It's been light for an hour. And I see, well, it's 40 miles ahead. Jump in my truck and away I go. 30 miles later, they were plowing the roads. There was 5 inches of wet snow on the ground. I pulled off the side of the road. I opened up my map. I said, am I going on the left side of the road or the right side? The north side or the south side? And I seen these hardwood ridges, a trail going in about 2 miles marked on the map, and then it went up on a big 6-mile-long hardwood ridge. I said, that's where I'm headed today. Threw my gear on, and away I went. Now, I traveled at a nice speed, comfortable, no big deal, no hurry. I went that 2 miles. It probably took 2 hours. I figured you could do about a mile an hour. It's now 11 o'clock. I'm at the base of this hardwood ridge. And I said, well, I said I was going to go on that ridge. I guess I am. I went up on the ridge, and I come into the first saddle, and I jumped deer out. It's probably noon now. Couldn't tell what they were. They all scattered. I backed up, and I circled a 200-yard circle, found where the deer had fed up to there, just does and fawns. I said, I don't want any part of that. Our job at this point as trackers is to find that big old track. So I left that, and I went about another 20 minutes, and I found a big buck track. Now, the track was hard to tell at this point to see the size of the print, but the stagger was big. What had happened is the snow started melting out of the trees, and it made the print, it was covered up, melting out, hard to tell the actual size. But the left to right, the stagger, the size of his chest was impressive. I said, this is a big buck. So I started to follow him. What is he doing? Get in his mind, as we had mentioned earlier. I said, I got to get in this buck's mind. What's on his head? Is he going to look for does? Is he with a doe, or is he feeding? Well, this buck was on his way home from work. He was just going right down the ridge. So away we go. 25 minutes later, he's doing a little zigzagging. So I slow right down. I said, I'm on the off-ramp. I'm close. And all of a sudden, I look down, and here, just a few yards ahead of me, is a huge buck track crossing the track I'm on. And I thought to myself, there's 2 of them in here. And then I rethought it. I'm in the Adirondacks. The chances of 2 being bucks right here together on this day, pretty slim. And I thought, this has got to be the same buck. And sure enough, I could see where he'd gone up 20, 30 yards in front of me, fed, bed down, and got up, and now had walked across in front of me. And his track is smoking fresh. Again, we talked a little bit earlier, how do you age a track? Well, common sense. The other one's all melted out, or snow's falling in it. This one's in the packy snow, wicked fresh. So I started on him, and he's still zigzagging, taking bites of food. So I'm one step at him at a time. And in my mind, I'm saying, you're right here. If I didn't scare you, you're right here. And I'll take a step, and then I will wait for him to make a mistake. And by that, I mean I wait for his ear to twitch, turn his head, stand up out of his bed, take a step, something to let me see him first. Let him make the mistake. At this point, I'd gone maybe 70 yards of this one stepping. And all of a sudden, standing dead still, I look to my left, 15 yards. He's laying down, looking down the hill. Now, it sounds like you're too close for that, but don't forget there's a lot of snow still on the trees. It's not a clear shot of him, but I see the brown. As I see the brown to my left, I raise my rifle. I go, that's got to be him. I'm going to confirm it's him before I shoot. As I'm doing that, he turns his head. It looked like a rocking chair. I mean, there was a lot of bone on the top of his head. I shot, he never got out of the bed. But the moral of the story, or the end of the story, was I'd never been on that road before. I'd never been up there before. The buck was a 10-pointer. He weighed 191 pounds, and he was 9.5 years old. You show me a way that I can kill a buck, a mature buck, with as little scouting as I just did, quicker and easier, I'll switch the way I hunt. That's just tracking in a nutshell. And as far as getting them out, I'm probably 3 miles in the woods at this point, 2 miles on the trail, a mile up on the ridge. I opened up my phone to check what time it was, and I got 5 bars of signal. I said, no kidding. I got to be up high enough where I'm getting a signal. I call my brother and I say, hey, I tell him the story. He goes, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, the snow's going to be gone by tonight. It's warming up. We're early in the season. It's going to disappear. I want you to call my buddy Steve, maybe call Jeff Litz, jump in the truck, shoot up. I'll start dragging for the trail. And I told him what trail I'd went on, and I'll meet you on the trail somewhere. 4 hours later, I met my brother on the trail. The fresh guys grabbed that buck, and we were in the truck 20 minutes after dark. But how else are you going to get a big old the buck scored 135? I mean, in the next day, I can't say I could have done it again, but I wanted to. I was tagged out.
Yeah.
So add it to what you're doing as another way to see this hunting through. Another quiver or arrow in your quiver, as I said.
So the one thing that based off of your stories you had just told and everything there, obviously that buck was bedded. But how important is it, or how do you prepare for that shot part of it? Because I would imagine most times they're not just standing there ready to eat the bullet.
No. You pray that they are, and you want a little bit of luck that they do. But it's very frustrating when guys will come down and we've got a sand pit and they want to shoot their rifle, get ready for season. And there's a week to go to the season, and they want to, like I say, sight in the rifle. So they put it on the bench. They shoot 100 yards, and they can outshoot me 7 days a week. No problem. And they get, $50, they can cover 3 rounds. They put the rifle back in the case, and they're ready. No, they're not. Their gun's ready. The gun's on. They're so far from ready, it's crazy. What you have to do 100% is shoot offhand. As soon as you're done getting the gun sighted in, don't use the bench anymore. Pick the gun up, put a box out there 60 yards, and shoot at that box offhand. It'll be a humbling event. You won't be covering any quarters, I can tell you that. And do it quickly and do it over and over and over. And it's muscle memory. Everybody in this room can imagine seeing the buck and thinking how easy it's going to be to pull out, put the crosshairs or the bead on, and kill the deer. What's the big deal with that? Now let me see you do it when that deer's in front of you.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a whole bunch of analysis paralysis comes in. You're shaking. You're excited. There's trees involved and whatnot, and the shot goes away, and they've missed the buck. The better you're prepared, the better the chances you're going to kill him. And as far as your question goes, if he's not just standing there and he's on the move, me personally, I don't pick an opening. That doesn't work for me because the deer never shows up in it, and I end up letting the deer goes, and I never got the shot off. I don't shoot at the deer. I try to shoot in the deer. So I shoot as fast as I can at the brown to try to get a bullet into him. And then some people might think that's a little unethical. I'm here to tell you I've never left a wounded buck in the woods in the Adirondacks in my career. So I don't mind where I hit him. I will end up with him. I get relentless when it comes to that.
And I'm imagining when you were talking about shooting that box and reloading and shooting it, as kind of as fast as you can, that's where you're practicing that. So in case you don't hit exactly where you're hoping to, you get a follow-up shot almost immediately and being able to make that happen.
Yeah, my dad used to say to me all the time, Joe, you're so much better off with one good shot than you are with, 5 other shots. I go, yeah, I agree, Dad, but my one good shot's my 4th shot. So I got to get rid of them first 3 quicker. But the one thing I got is I really want to press on everybody. If you do happen to get a shot that's not the shot that you wanted, but you got him wounded, this is when you sneak up even better, slower, more cautious than when he wasn't wounded. That buck is going to lay down. You come trampling through those woods thinking because he's wounded you can just finish the job. You got a really good chance of putting him up once or twice more, and then he becomes almost unkillable, where he was an easy kill when he was wounded laying down the first time. So don't get excited. Reload your gun. Relax. Give him a 20-minute deal. Know he's laying down, and then follow up with the one-step thing, because when he's laying down, he doesn't want to get up. He's wounded. He might see you coming slow. He's going to let you get close enough to get that shot. You come in hard, you're going to bump him up. You do that twice. He knows you're coming. He hides in those special places. He goes hard. He becomes a lot harder to kill. So if you started this thing, make sure you know how to finish it.
Well, and I would compare that to when I first started elk hunting, and everyone's like, all right, you're going out west, you got to learn to shoot your bow a little bit further, and you got to do this, and you practice at these known yardages, these known ranges, and you have this nice sight that dials into those yardages, and use your rangefinder. Well, what I learned about bow hunting elk was that many times it's happening fast. They're chasing a cow and they're pushing the herd, and then this cow squirts out, and then that bull comes over, and you got to make something happen fast, and you got to. So what I've changed in my practice with that is, as after everything's sighted in, and I will continue to shoot at known yardages, getting that form down. But most days I'm just throwing arrows around in my yard at random places and practicing those types of things of not knowing exactly where's my pin going to hit? How am I going to be able to judge this? Be able to do it to practice for those real life scenarios versus, those known things, because that rarely happens when you get in those scenarios, which sounds very similar to when you're tracking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like you had said, and that's a great point, the practice. And nobody has time anymore. We all got cell phones, computers, and all this to save us time, and I got less time than I ever had. That doesn't work. But the day you go down to the thing and you're shooting to the bench, make sure you bring enough ammo to shoot at the box and get a couple of those days in. Just like he had mentioned, he's still going to practice the known yardage, but he's practicing the more live situation. And it's not a maybe or should I. You absolutely should. You don't want to go through all you got to go through to get to that point to blow it with a shot. And I've walked out of the woods many times with a tear in my eye because I blew it at the end. And I walk out of the woods a lot less now with that tear, and I walk out a lot more with that buck behind me because I practiced. It's worth that little bit of effort.
Yeah, it doesn't take that happening too many times to really, if you want it bad enough to really drive it home, that you got to make time to do that.
You really, really do. And when you sit on the bench and you make that shot, in your head, you're going to make the shot on the whitetail the same way. It's no problem. I'll put the crosshairs on, I'll lean against the tree, whatever. It never happens that way in the live event. Everything, your heart's beating faster, you're swinging, you don't have a bench, you're shooting offhand. It's almost got to be muscle memory instead of thought process. When you get down on that bench and you're left and right, and you're going up and down, and it's finally right on the bullseye, and you do the squeeze, that's great. Guns on. When it comes time for the real kill, none of the thoughts happening. You're pulling up and shooting, and I have seen many bucks run away from me when I was younger that I don't even remember where I aimed. All I know is the gun went off a couple of times, and I didn't touch him. And I can't even remember aiming. And I don't think I did. Because it has to be muscle memory. It has to happen automatic. There's no time for that thought.
And are you using scope, open sights, or like how are you looking? You think about it, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, oh, what scope to use for deer hunting in the big woods, and everyone wants to put the big scopes on and everything. What's your thought process on that side of it?
Well, as far as what optics you use or iron sights, most of my shots are 50 yards and under. So obviously I don't need the 3 to 9 Leopold scope. I need the 1.5 to 4 or the 2 to 5. I don't need high power. And as far as scope to open sights, I suggest open sights if your eyes will still allow you to do it. Once they don't, you're going to have to go to scope. I have 2 guns that I love them both. The scope gun is for the day when there's no snow, no rain, and no snow in the trees. And when I say no snow, it's not snowing out because I only hunt when there's snow on the ground. The peep sight, the iron sight, is if there's snow in the trees, it's snowing or raining. And it's only because I'm not very good at keeping my scope clean all day long. So I know myself well enough to know I got to go with a peep sight. Am I going to lose a buck here and there because I could have got him with a scope? Maybe. But I might have lost one because I had the scope and it had snow in it as well. So I think it's a trade-off.
So so if there's no snow, you don't hunt?
I don't hunt.
I was going to ask you about you just don't hunt.
No, I don't hunt. I'm so busy on the farm and whatnot. I've killed 2 bucks. I say I don't hunt. I rarely hunt. I've killed 2 bucks in the last 24 years with no snow. And both times it's because I was invited to a camp for the camaraderie of the camp, not because I wanted to go hunting. But hunting was part of the trip, and it worked out for me. One of them was a small 8-pointer with Jim, and the burn ears were down, and we had a great time, and I shot a buck. And the other one, we were going into a camp way back in, and I shot my heaviest buck to date, 206 pounds of the Adirondacks, buck with no snow on November 14th. But as a rule, no snow, I don't hunt.
Yeah. Okay. But say like that situation where you're going with buddies and you're going to camp, and it's a lot about that, and you are still gonna hunt because you're not gonna sit back at camp when you could be out in the woods. Say if you were doing that, would you still try to track, or would you still hunt, or would you have a different strategy to it?
I think what I would do, I don't want to burn up a lot of my stamina, but I do want the exercise, so I would see a lot of ground. But to be honest with you, in my mindset, I'm not thinking about killing a deer. If it comes to about, like it did those 2 times, great. But I'm more looking for sign. It's more of a scouting thing for me. Looking forward to that night with the fire and the guys and playing the cards or whatever. So I just want to see new ground. And I will, though, put in the memory bank if I see some big rubs and whatnot, come back and check when the snow's there. So It's a scouting venture more than anything then.
So say in the Adirondacks or in the places that you hunt, is that deer camp culture a pretty big deal?
It can be. I'd gone up to Jim's camp, and we have more fun in that camp. It is. It really is. But I do want to say, if you're going to track, that's a solo thing. All the fun is afterwards. If you're going to go tracking and your brother's going to go or your best friend's going to go and you're both going to want to ride in the same truck, and then you say, I'll meet you at the truck at dark, personally, I think that's a mistake. If you want to go with your friend, make sure he drives his own vehicle and tell him where you're going to meet him after the hunt's over. Not on the side of the road, because you might come out at 3:30, you killed your buck, or you gave up, or you got cold or whatever, or you might come out at 8:30 at night and he's been waiting 3 hours. You don't want that pressure of what you got to be there at 5 o'clock. This is a solo deal. Your job is to go in there, find that track, and get that buck, not worry about what your buddy's doing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because, how many times I can think of times where you take, one vehicle and you're going in. Yeah, you're going to hunt your own places, but, yeah, what happens if you do get on that, that track later in the day than you wanted to, or something happens? Obviously, there's always these perfect scenarios, but rarely do those work out that way.
Well, I got a prime example, a short story that happened to me. We had gotten snow in the Adirondacks, and I was going into an area, and there was maybe 1.5 inches of snow. Although I was still climbing in elevation, I was so excited to get in the woods and try this new area that I pulled off to the side of the road, and away I went. Well, I went only down in there for about an hour, not even, maybe 40 minutes, and there was a lot of crunch underneath the snow, and I just said, as much as I wanted to see this new area, I know farther up this road, another 10 or 15 miles, there's probably 3 inches of snow. I made my way back to the truck. Now, what if I had a buddy and he was on the other side of the road? I'm leaving at 9:30. I drove another 15 miles up the road. I got out of my truck and I started up a logging road. I didn't even go less than a half a mile, and I caught a buck track. This buck track was fresh, and I go, hey, look at this. Was a good move. It's a lot quieter. There's more snow. Everything was good. I started following him, and I did not go 300 more yards, and the buck went out in front of me. As to the hunting with the running shot, the buck veered left through the hardwood ridges, and I pulled a shot at him, and I shot twice more. And then on the 4th shot, I could still see the deer. And I said, now, wait a minute. That deer's got to be hit. Because I've shot 3 times at him, and he stopped. He's wounded bad. I took the 4th shot, and he disappeared. Well, my sling is always in my pocket, so I reach in my pocket, and I set the sling down in the snow. I reload my gun. I take all in what just happened, and I said, let me go see what's going on. I went up to where the deer had gone through the hardwoods where the first shot went off, and there was hair and blood there. I said, no kidding, Joe. You hit one on the run. I was pretty happy. I went up a little ways farther, and sure enough, there's a nice 8-point buck. I had gotten him. So I said, well, let me go back, do a little slide film, because we were doing slide programs back then, take some pictures. So as I came around the blowdown that this tree went out of, and I'm getting close to where I'd shot from, there's a guy standing there picking my sling up out of the snow. And I looked at him, I said, who are you? Not even in a nice way, because I'm so shocked to see another person in these woods. And he looks at me, he doesn't answer, and he says, did you get him? I said, yeah, I did. And he swore, and he said, I've been on that track since this morning, daylight. Now it's 10:30 or 11. I don't even know what time it was, and I felt bad. I didn't know he was tracking this buck, and I just killed him. Not on purpose, obviously. So we started to talk, and I commented on his gun. I said, that's a good-looking gun you got there. And I said, the stock, and he said it was a P&R stock or something like that. And I said, well, it's kind of a strange looking because it was stainless steel with this green and brown camo That's a little bit odd for this time of year because it's not that green in the woods. And he says, and it's a Hart's Barrel. Have you heard of them? And I said, yeah, I've heard of Hart's Barrel. And he put his hand out. Well, I'm Jimmy Hart. So that's how I met the guys who were from Hart's Barrel. He goes, do you need help getting the deer out? Well, I'm only 500 yards from the truck, and it was an old logging road not far from me. He said, no, I'm all set. I was feeling really bad till then. He said, I'm going to make a swing and head back to the camp. I was in Montana earlier this year, and I shot a buck that scored 172. I said, well, I don't feel as bad anymore. 172. But I do want to end this long story with another side note. 5 years later, I was hunting in the same area with my son. We had made a big loop, and we came out to the road just at dark. And here comes a pickup up the road. And we got 3 miles to go to get back to the truck, and my son's legs were on fire, as were mine. We were spent. And here comes a truck. I go, what are the chances? Will he give us a ride? So I just happened to throw my thumb out, and the guy stopped. I said, is there any chance we could jump on your tailgate? My truck is 3 miles up the road at the gates. He goes, sure. And I looked at him. I said, my gosh, you look familiar. He goes, I oughta. You shot a buck in front of me 5 years ago. So it was a lot of fun, and there's a lot. And yeah, the camp, it was great. And a little side note on this, and we all know who the Benoits are and whatnot. The following year, we were in the Syracuse show, and I was talking to the Harts, and I happened to run into Lanny Benoit. I introduced them, too, and that's where they got the Hart's Barrel on their guns. And that's what's down in the place for sale now. So,
oh, that's hilarious.
Kind of a neat story, but I did feel bad till he told me he shot 172 in Montana. I didn't feel as bad anymore. A lot of great guys in the woods, but you don't see many when you get back in like that.
I was going to say, probably when you're doing that, the people that you run into in those places are probably people you get along with.
Yeah, pretty good guys.
Yeah.
Pretty good bunch of guys. Yeah, they really are.
Have you seen tracking change over the years? Like, say, when you started it to now, are there any, are you still kind of doing the same things?
To me, I'm doing the same thing, only I'm thinking hopefully getting a little better at it as the experience goes, and you should. But I see more people, to me, I'm seeing more people do it, but I don't know if there are more people doing it. It's just that I'm out here more seeing you guys. Yeah. So back when I was in my 20s and 30s, I don't know if anybody did it or not because I wasn't talking to that many. And then when Jim asked me to come on the seminar trail kind of with me, we started talking to more people. But I am surprised at how many people we've talked to over the years and how few will actually do it and still come to a dozen seminars in a row and still not try it. So it must be a little bit entertaining just to hear about. I don't know.
That's funny. So I guess, Joe, I think we'll end this seminar or this podcast here. I'm confused. Like I said, I'm not used to
because I talk too much.
No, I'm not used to doing this in person here.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Where can people that are listening to this or anybody even in here, where can they find more of the stuff that you said you've done seminars and you've done other things? Can people find any of that stuff?
Well, we are the ADK Trackers, and you can go onto our Facebook page, and we do have a book out there for sale. I'm seeing it a little bit more and more. I believe it's Jeff Doyle's got the 200-inch club. It's coming around. There's some places to research it just by putting tracking whitetails in a Google search, you know. But I don't promote it that much. I just have fun coming here and doing these talks.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on here. It's cool to see how there's so many different ways to be able to hunt and do things and find different ways that you like to hunt, and everyone likes to hunt and do that. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think it's great if some people come here and they're bow hunters and just want to hear another thing, because I'll go to a bow hunting seminar as well, and I don't bow hunt. And I just pick up tidbits of what he talks about, whitetails and this and that, and I think it's fun.
See, I mean, I love bow hunting, and that's kind of what I love to do, but I like all of it. Like, I
like it all.
I love learning new ways of doing things and being able to try to be effective in some of those different tactics and techniques with it, and yeah, I think it's really awesome. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, one of the biggest things, the nicest kicks I get or compliments or whatever, is when a guy comes up to me and he always wanted the track and didn't, and then he came to a few seminars, and then he shows me a picture of the buck he killed, or he talks about what a great day he had doing it, even if he didn't get the buck. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And Jim taught me years ago, and if we were going to end this on a note, one of the things I must say, and it changed my life as a young guy compared to now, when I was younger, I kind of had the thing of me against you or me against you on who's going to get the buck. And Jim showed me it's us against the deer. So when your buddy shoots a big buck or your neighbor shoots a big buck and you're a little bit upset about it, don't. Because it'll be your turn next year and you want him to be happy for you. Plenty of deer to go around. There's going to be another deer, another season. So I think you always should encourage the other guys.
100%.
Yeah,
well, thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
Well, listen, thanks for having me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with your buddies. Leave us a rating, a review, and subscribe. If you want to check out more content like this, there's plenty in the links below. We truly appreciate having you guys along with us.